What are some of your biggest challenges you face as a writer? So like, what would be the thing that maybe comes the hardest for you to write, or that you struggle with the most?
So two things I can think of off the top of my head. Uh, I cannot visualize interior environments to save my life. Like it's, I don't know. It's like a weird
Mm,
like how some people are like face blind. Like I am interior environment blind. Like I'll be like they walk into a dungeon or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know what's in there, man. Like cave moss. And
yeah.
I really have to sit and spend too much time thinking about like what might have happened here, like what would like whether it's interior environment or like a room or whatever, like whatever it is, like so, like a king's bedchamber or like a massive like tent in a war camp or something like that. That's always the stuff where I'm like, what would be there? Like what would it what smells would be like? What sounds would you be hearing? That's tough for me in terms of like the actual like writing aspect. And then the other thing is I write really slowly and inefficiently.
Hmm.
Like I did a while back on Twitter. I asked people like what their best word counts were of like for a single day, like ever. And some people were like 12,000, like 13,000, like 20,000 words in a
Hmm.
day.
Yeah.
And I think my best, like if I do 5K in a week, man, that's a good week for me. I think my best
Yeah.
ever in a day was like 8,000, and
Yeah.
that was a short story, so there weren't any like long term plot things to consider.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
kind of realized that
I'm the
I
same,
write,
exactly the same. If I can get a couple hundred words a day, that's like super great, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I've realized that just like the downside to prose coming pretty intuitively is that it's because I spend a lot of time thinking about it, and I hate writing like sloppy like inefficient sentences, and
Yeah.
so I will get sucked in the trap where I'll sit there and essentially like line edit as I'm drafting when I should just be drafting. And so I'm really trying to work around that with this second draft. Like yeah, it results in some pretty good lines, but it's just horribly inefficient.
Hmm.
And I can always go back and I keep telling myself like I can go back and edit. So if there's anything I'm unsure of, I've just in this new draft for the sequel, I've just started putting it in bold, which is just like come back to this later, and move on,
Hmm.
and it is helping, but it's still like a mental battle for me just to be okay and comfortable with just like writing stuff and moving on.
Do you find though that maybe like does it end up being kind of the same amount of work? So like if you take your time and try to come up with like really clean prose right away, does it save you time later in the edit, or does it not save you any time?
I don't know yet because this is my first time trying this.
Yeah.
So, like this was like a thing. This was like the like okay, how do I get better as a writer? Like I'm going to commit to doing this on the draft of this novel of
Yeah.
the sequel. So and it's funny. I had the same thought. I'm like I don't know if this is going to work or not, but um, I got to try it and if it works, I'll keep doing it. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to my spend 30 minutes on one paragraph, but it's a damn good paragraph. So
Right. Um, I I like what you said about visualizing interior environments. I quite literally last night was doing a little writing before I went to bed, and I wrote. I was kind of writing this whole scene and had some like interior stuff and all this character stuff, and had no problem with any of that. And then I got to this place where like the character went into a different room, and then I was like totally stuck. Like I just couldn't even. I'm like, he went into the room, and then it was like, I don't know what it looks like. I could not figure it out.
yeah, it's insane, and it like kills the momentum, and you can't like not give the reader some piece of context,
Hmm.
otherwise you end up in like floating head like white room territory, and
Yeah,
that's yeah, and then like there goes your immersion. So
yeah,
it's like you gotta you gotta like figure it out, and that's a frustrating part.
yeah. It's also it's kind of like you end up doing like stage like if you've ever done a musical or a play or scenes like you have to sometimes you just have to do blocking where you just figure out where everything goes on the stage. And that's some like I get to that point and then I have to like pull myself out of the flow to be like, okay, so this is here and this is here and the character's over here, you know. Yeah, it really kills the momentum.
Yeah, so that's funny. Like this kind of reminds me of fight scenes. So there's a lot of them in Shadowbane, and if there's one thing that gets universally praised in every good review, it's the fight scenes, and that's because I go into a psychotic amount of like detail and planning with it to
Hmm.
to where it's like okay, like this character's doing A, B, and C. Like while that's happening, like how many seconds would that take? What's the other character doing? How does that line up? What does the first character see in the second character
Hmm.
to keep you like anchored on the whole scene? But then like you can't only describe that because they're still fighting. So like what glimpse do they get as those two things are happening simultaneously? And like I will sit there and like pour over that until it's like actually concrete
Hmm.
to where it lines up. And then same thing with like spatial distances and stuff like that. Like, oh, how many steps would they take to get to this distance in time while this other thing is happening? And it's like, it's probably I'm probably overdoing it, but like I need it to feel airtight. Otherwise, it
Yeah.
doesn't feel real to me.
Yeah. No, I think that's smart though. Like, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of extra work and maybe you overthink it, but at the same time, I've read a lot of books where I get lost in the fight scene. Like I'm reading the fight scene, I'm like, wait, where'd this character come from? Like all of a sudden it doesn't make sense, and you're like, I
Yeah,
don't know what's going on here. So it's probably worth it, I'd say.
and I hope so. And that's like if I get spend extra time doing it, and the readers just like pulled in and immersed, that like that's the point of like trying to make something good, right? Is that
Yeah.
you deliver an experience. And like every time I hear someone say they skip fight scenes, like it breaks my heart. I'm like, that's like some of
Yeah.
my favorite scenes of all time
Yeah.
when it's well done.
Yeah. So, back to Wheel of Time. So, something he does in those books that's interesting when there's a fight scene, he kind of like, he doesn't really describe it. So, maybe you wouldn't even like this. It'd be interesting to, I'd be interested to hear what you think. Sometimes what he'll do is like, he'll just say like the name of the form, like flower dancing on water. Like, that's the name of the form of the sword
Right.
form. And so, it's kind of this weird, like, there's a fight scene, but he's never really telling you what's happening. He's just saying these sword forms and stuff. It's kind of interesting.
So I actually think that's really cool, especially if you go into a little bit from the world building perspective, because
Hmm.
it helps. Like so I wrestled and then I studied mixed martial arts for about 4 years, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai and standard like Western boxing and stuff. So I have an appreciation for how there's so many different styles and forms of combat. And so if there's a way to like to work that in, even on kind of a surface level, you don't have to go super detailed with it.
Hmm.
But I do appreciate that they can kind of like if an author wants to bypass blow by blow choreography, which is really hard to do well and it's usually not worth the effort.
Hmm.
Like I don't do blow by blow all the time, and if they can find a way to use that to enrich the world building and kind of add a layer to it, like I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's still
awesome.
something that it can be tough to pull off because you still have to make it sound kind of believable, and you still have to you still have to write it in a way that's still intense and fast paced and feels like feels real.
Hmm.
So yeah, I actually think that's really cool. I have an idea for something kind of like that for a different project,
Hmm.
which yeah would involve like named like move sets and counters and stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah, definitely I think it's awesome.
yeah, that's cool.